Lying isn't the best thing to do when one finds himself in the center of a nuclear accident. But this was the way of a seasoned engineer and a politician, Viktor Brukhanov. His words hit Boris Prushinsky hard, almost draining all life from him within a fraction of a second. What did Brukhanov say to the experienced nuclear accident specialist that his heart almost stopped? Today we are going to continue the miniseries you have seen the last few weeks, The People of Chernobyl. Last time I explained Legasov's background in a more detailed way, as well as Shcherbina's. I think this would be necessary to understand their decisions and motivations better. You could learn a bit about Anatoly Alexandrov as well as Skliarov's previous experiences with Shcherbina and why he didn't particularly like him. This time, we will get into the actions taken by Legasov and Shcherbina as soon as they arrived in Pripyat. Also, you will get more context for Prushinsky's first insight about the disaster. He was, in fact, one of the first people to investigate it and look at the destroyed Unit 4 of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. For those of you who wonder who they were, Boris Shcherbina was a high party official from Moscow. Valery Legasov was an academician and an expert on nuclear physics, as well as a chemist. Vitaly Skliarov was a Ukrainian Minister of Energy, a counterpart to Moscow's Minister Anatoly Mayorets. Anatoly Alexandrov was one of the most influential scientists in the USSR, one of the fathers of the RBMK reactor, and the leader of the Kurchatov Institute when Chernobyl disaster happened. And last but not least, Boris Prushinsky. He was also a scientist, a leading member of the OPAS, a quick response team from the Soviet Union's Ministry of Energy that reacted to any nuclear-related incidents within the borders of the USSR. Now, we have the necessary reminder behind us, so let's start today's episode. The People of Chernobyl. Valery Legasov. Part 5. When his heart almost stopped. When the Unit 4 at Chernobyl nuclear power plant exploded, it took about 10 hours for the first team of experts sent from Moscow to arrive at the place. After 9 hours, about 11 am, their plane was landing near Kiev. This team was led by Boris Prushinsky, a specialist working in many high-profile nuclear institutes, agencies and ministries, including the Ministry of Energy and Soyuz Atomenergo. Other people in the plane were different specialists as well as military and civil intelligence. There were, for example, KGB agents, scientists from the State Institute of Biophysics, or Moscow's Hospital No. 6, which was dedicated to treating radiological cases, including people affected by nuclear incidents. When the team was exiting the plane, Boris learned that the government commission was created. Nothing surprising there for him. He was well aware of how Moscow was dealing with any kind of nuclear accident. Yet, the true nature of the disaster was still unknown to anybody. The only information they had were reports sent to Moscow, most importantly by the power plant's director, Viktor Brukhanov. Despite how unimaginably this sounds, all information was also susceptible to censorship, as it first had to travel all the bureaucratic way, including going through the Politburo. Assembling and sending Prushinsky's team was a reaction to the first report handed to Gorbachev, the current leader of the Soviet Union. In the meantime, probably more reports were incoming, yet Boris didn't have any idea what were they saying. They were not relayed to him or his specialists. This way of dealing with things like nuclear accidents is far from a good way, but it certainly helped to maintain secrecy and control over any news. So far, they knew about some damages to the building and the system, as the fire broke up and part of the roof collapsed. They were informed that the reactor shut down safely and was being cooled with water, so all the repairs could be done and it could work for the next decades. They have also learned that 2 men from the power plant staff were now dead. What exactly happened? No one in the first team from Moscow knew it, and they probably didn't suspect the scale of the accident. Because of the initial reports they were presented, they believed that there will be no more casualties, and could suspect some containment and construction works only. But there were some tense looks when they got out of their bus driving them from Kiev's airport to Pripyat. Prushinsky saw soldiers clothed in the Lepestok, a respirator filtering radioactive particles from the atmosphere. His first thought was probably, why is he dressed like this if the reactor was not damaged and everything was under control? The power plant staff met them there and reassured everything was fine, so Boris was relieved, and all small details he saw was attributed to overestimated precaution rather than a sign of a more serious accident. They arrived at Hotel Polisia, a building overlooking the central square. Director Brukhanov met them downstairs in the restaurant at the lunch. Prushinsky wanted to hear a direct report, so he immediately asked him what's the problem with the unit. Brukhanov gave contradictory information to his superiors during the first days after the disaster. For several hours he would maintain that the reactor was intact. This was later a subject during the Chernobyl trial, when he was found guilty and sentenced. Despite that, for unknown reasons, he decided to be completely honest at this moment. With a look of guilt and resignation, Brukhanov faced Prushinsky and simply said, "There is no unit anymore." Boris was stunned. He knew that Viktor was not a scientist, let alone the nuclear expert. But that look on his face made Prushinsky feel a chill going down his spine. Brukhanov probably saw the disbelief and horror in the scientist's eyes, so he added, "Have a look for yourself. The separators are visible from the street." Some hours later, after that terrifying moments, the third team arrived in Pripyat. Sherbina and his team introduced themselves to people who met them there. They quickly took their duties onto them, and the meeting of the government commission began about 10 p.m., 20 hours after the accident happened. In the room, there were maps, documents, and ashtrays lying everywhere on a huge table. The air was filled with cigarette smoke, and everyone felt that hanging tension in their guts. Legasev was listening closely to the reports Malomush, regional party leader, was giving to Sherbina. As one could expect from a politician, not a scientist or power plant worker, Malomush's words were empty. They carried no details or suggestions on how to deal with the consequences. The only thing they confirmed was that the test was running when the accident happened. A turbine rundown experiment was carried on, as planned, in Unit 4. Soon after the staff started it, 2 explosions occurred, one very close to another. The reactor building was mostly destroyed and there were hundreds of injuries among the staff, with 2 men dead. The rest was treated in the Pripyat hospital. They said that the radiation levels in Pripyat were higher than normal, but were not threatening the people living in the city. Sherbina quickly divided the members of the commission into 3 groups. One investigating the cause, second measuring the dosimetry readings, third overseeing containing the effects of the accident. The first one was led by Meshkov, deputy head of the Ministry of Medium Machine Building, or Sredmash. This ministry played a crucial role in designing the RBMK reactors. The second one was under the control of General Ivanov of the Civil Defense and General Gennady Berdov of the Ukrainian Interior Ministry. Included in this group, Evgeny Vorobiev would take care of medical matters. He was a deputy health minister for the whole Soviet Union. And the third one was overseen by Valery Legasov. Valery knew his ways. The first problem he voiced out was the possibility of a chain reaction still occurring in the reactor number 4. He knew that the operators of the Unit 4 had already tried to get the nuclear fuel out by pouring boric acid powder. Boron has the ability to absorb neutrons, so overall this didn't seem like a bad idea. They poured it into the water tanks that were still pumping water into the cooling system of the reactor number 4. What they didn't know or weren't sure about was the state of the cooling system. They were not convinced that it worked, even despite the reports said the reactor was not damaged. The reality was different. The broken pipelines created a maze of tangled steel because of the 2 explosions Malomush reported. At the same time, they encountered additional obstacles, as the overall system was broken. Rovno nuclear power plant director was hesitating to send them necessary materials, including tons of additional boron acid powder. They slowly started to realize how difficult their task will be. And there was yet another bad news. At this moment, they still believed the reactor was intact. Thanks for watching. So far, we've only covered the first moments of the disaster, and believe me when I say there is a lot more to speak about, especially if you want to understand the Soviet mind better. If you read between the lines, you will quickly realize how twisted and corrupt that system was, and how it affected the disaster that could be handled way better. Anyhow, leave a comment if you want to ask about anything specific, about the Chernobyl or the game we made. Or if you just want to say you liked or didn't like this episode. I'm taking off to prepare another video on this mini-series, so you will hear from me next Sunday, as always. That's it for today, guys. Take care, stay safe, and see you next week.